Because let's face it, man.
No, this is payback for everything that Christians or
Bingo.
people who have called themselves Christians have done to gay people over the years and the way they've treated gay people.
And because Christianity has been what Christianity is in actuality has been twisted to the point that what you hear Christianity is out there in the mainstream
often has no relation to what actually happens in churches on Sunday morning. Man.
And if you think that the mainstream isn't jumping in on the let's kick the Christians, let's blame all of this on Christianity, I would encourage you to listen to this little back and forth between Chris Cuomo and Ryan McMahon, who he's the director of the family values there in Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
They were instrumental in helping to construct this bill,
mm-hmm.
which, by the way, like you said, was almost word for word
the federal law
for Bill Clinton signed. Okay, this
mm-hmm.
is Bill Clinton's law that they're mimicking here. Let's listen to this back and forth. See if you notice anything.
That is your statement about it. You're also a Christian, yes?
Yes.
And do you believe that doing business with gays would be offensive to you if you were a businessman?
No. There's talk of that if you're a hotel or a restaurant, this bill would allow you to discriminate against gay and lesbian people. That is just not true. It's never been true of any of the 30 states where this has come up. And I wouldn't do that. I would gladly serve. I have gay and lesbian friends. I would gladly serve them in my restaurant if they came and wanted a sandwich. That's not what this is about. This is about, I'll tell you what, the main thing that we haven't even discussed is the Hobby Lobby case. If you look at it last summer, there are a lot of people across the country that looked at that case, and the Supreme Court looked at RFRA over and over again, and they embraced RFRA. And if not for RFRA on the federal level, Hobby Lobby would have lost that case. And people really started to look at it and thought, boy, if a family-owned business like Hobby Lobby could be forced through Obamacare to be funding abortion-causing drugs through federal legislation, yet that federal RFRA doesn't apply on the state level, what should we be doing on the state level to get in line with these protections across the country?
Did he say? I noticed something, or actually, I failed to notice something.
Speak on it.
I failed to notice that he said anything about this law has anything to do with gay people. He was talking about abortion.
Yeah. I mean, he used the abortion as an example, but
he also, I noticed, said he was a Christian.
Well, because Chris Cuomo made it about his Christianity. Much like NBC does, and ABC and CBS.
But how can he be a Christian and still say, "Oh, I would happily serve a gay person at my restaurant"?
Oh, that's easy. Because he is a real, genuine Christian.
Yes. Okay, there you go. Now, see, you and I go to church every Sunday and every Wednesday. We'll be at church tomorrow night.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be at church with a bunch of real Christians.
Mm-hmm.
People who love other people unconditionally because Jesus loved us unconditionally.
But you have to understand, though, a lot of this hatred from the gay community towards Christians has been earned. Sorry, my fellow Christian brothers and sisters, but it has been earned because you've taken this part of the Bible, these scriptures, where it spoke against, homosexuality, and instead of looking at the homosexuality as it's just a sin, another sin, yet another one that is in a whole list of sins that has been mentioned in those scriptures, and have turned Christianity, or at least made Christianity have the appearance of being bigoted. I heard with my own ears out of my own fellow Christians just within the last few weeks that if you don't feel that homosexuality is an abomination to God and that these people are going to burn in hell for their homosexuality, then you need to question your salvation. Are you serious right now? Really, dude? Really? That's how you think? That's the way I'm supposed to feel. I am supposed to look at what they're doing, what a homosexual is doing, as such an abomination that I should not only disassociate with any of them, but that I should actively seek to make their lives worse. That's what your definition of Christianity is, and you can't figure out why so many people can't stand us. You know, I made we were at church a few weeks ago, and I had said something to somebody like, you know what this church needs? We need more sinners in here. I'm looking around, and I see a bunch of really good people that are really doing the Lord's work, and they're really trying to be, you know, the right sort of Christian. But, man, we need this place with some drug addicts in here. We need some of those homosexuals that you're screaming about in here. How are you going to show them the love of God if you won't let them in the building? I'm not saying we need to marry them. I'm not saying we should allow their ceremonies on the premises. But I am saying that how are you going to show somebody love and kick them at the same time?
Or even how do you get them into church if you don't go out on the street or in the neighborhoods and seek out the sinners and bring them to church? Because sometimes they're not going to walk in on their own.
Or how about recognizing that if you're a Christian, you yourself are just as big a sinner as any homosexual out there? And that probably stings to some of the leaders of the church. But, buddy, your sins are just as bad as anybody in the gay community. You know, I had said on Facebook, we were talking that I wanted to expound on the definition of fake Christianity. Because I keep seeing that term, fake Christian, fake Christian, fake Christian. I'm beginning to wonder if there ain't more fake Christians than there are genuine Christians. Because I even in my own church, I have seen them make a much bigger deal out of whether or not two people should be allowed to marry if they're the same sex than I have of the fact that we, as American citizens, are being forced to spend our tax money on the wholesale slaughter of innocent, unborn children. And in some cases, partially born children.
Or children born alive and killed.
Where's the outrage there? People, a fake Christian is someone who claims to be a Christian but has no concept of what it means to be Christ-like.
Well,
I feel these days, you know, Casey and I both have a lot of anger right now with the gay community just because of their, you know, we're going to try to one-up you. You know, you guys were mean to us, so now we're going to take your livelihoods. All right? The two wrongs trying to make a right. That we're very irritated about that. But I find myself being more irritated with people who are spouting this fake Christian doctrine that says we're going to be outraged at this sin and this sin and this sin, but these other sins, some of which I'm doing myself, well, you know, we don't want to rock the boat.
We don't want to really talk about that.
Yeah, you know, that. But this gay marriage thing, it's in the news right now. I mean, we've got to speak out. We got to stand and support, and we've got to show the world that we Christians are united. Really? So that whole, you didn't hear none of the abortion part then, huh? That part just went right out the window.
At least gay people are alive, and we've got a chance to actually minister to them. When you kill somebody and you take their life away from them, your chance at ministering to them, you can't serve them anymore.
And if you're talking about being a Christian, which means to try to emulate the life of Christ, well, it seems to me that I seem to recollect this little this little story in the Bible where, the disciples try to run these kids off because they thought that they was bothering Jesus. Y'all get these kids away from here and quit bothering the Savior. And Jesus said, hold on just a minute. Whatever you do to the least of these, talking about these children, you're doing to me. And you would be better off having a millstone hung around your neck and cast into a burning lake of fire for all eternity than to do wrong by one of these children. If you lead one of these kids astray, their blood is on your hands. So that's just talking about being a bad example, more or less. Imagine if you are a Christian. Imagine how Jesus is going to feel about your silent approval of the wholesale slaughter of innocent children. Imagine how he's going to feel about that. The least of these.
And see,
it's about priorities, man. It's so easy.
And see, we have a witness that we have to protect, and we can't do it with hate.
No, you'll never beat hate with more hate, man.
So, we're told love the sinner, hate the sin. Hey, man, look, if you want to single out homosexuality as a sin to hate, knock yourself out. But you still have to love that sinner. And the thing is, we're all sinners. If somebody was to pick out some of my sins, which I have a trouble with letting go of anger, and I have trouble sometimes forgiving people who have done me wrong, but I want God to forgive me for all the things I do wrong. I got a big, that's an issue with me, okay? If somebody starts to pick on that, where am I in the equation?
Well,
if somebody wants to pick on somebody holding on to anger and single that out as an abomination, and it is an abomination before God because it's a sin.
Well, look, this bill in Indiana, this is about religious liberty, and that also is for you atheists out there just as much as it is for us Baptists or Catholics or Jews.
So that you atheists who have no religion.
What if they start targeting you?
Yeah.
What if your way of life is no longer acceptable? See, that's the thing about this country and our Constitution. We as citizens, we're supposed to be equally protected under the law.
Regardless of your religion,
Yeah.
or your race, or your sexual preference.
But the way things are going right now, it's all religions except Christians and Jews. Now, in this country, the anti-Semitism is not nearly as great as it is in Europe right now, or in Greece.
But it's still pretty bad.
It's still pretty bad.
Especially in places, which this is really, I find to be really odd, but in places like California.
Mm-hmm. Or New York even.
Where, Jewish people are kind of having to keep their Jewishness on the down low.
Mm-hmm. And we down here in the South are supposed to be the bigots.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard. Man, look, I've lived in Alabama my whole life, and honest to God, my hand before God, I have never, in almost 44 years, ever heard an anti-Semitic comment in where I live. Ever. I don't mean this house. I mean this part of the state that I'm all over the place.
Just so y'all know, we got a temple downtown.
Yeah.
Dude, I lived in Birmingham where there is I used to live in a high-rise directly next door to Temple Emmanuel in Birmingham, which is a big one.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful building. And on the outside of it, on the side that faced my window, it said, "In my house shall be a house of prayer for all people."
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I never, in all the time that I was living there and seeing all these Jewish people going to temple on Saturdays,
Mm-hmm.
and all that, I never heard anybody cracking on these people for being Jewish.
Go to California then.
And
Go to New York.
And by the way, I'm talking about Birmingham, Alabama. That's the South here. And so,
Home of fire hoses and dogs.
So, Marty and I grew up